We've had an amazing dahlia season this year. Despite very dry weather this summer and a spider mite attack, they still survived and bloomed really beautifully for us. With cooler weather approaching, it is time to tuck them in for winter. Hi everyone! Today's mission is store the dahlias for winter. We recently moved, so I dug up some tubers from the allotment, and we also have all the containers that we had planted earlier this year where we have to leave the tubers so that they don't get damaged by frost over winter. Okay, this is the situation. This is where we placed all our containers when we moved. That was a beast of a project. And so I have a bunch of containers with things that came from the allotment, a lot of pots that I had planted for this season. Over here was my favorite dahlia, Happy Single Kiss. I could completely have cut them back for the move and already lifted them, but I hadn't labeled them because I want to remember what color and what varieties I had. I left them in the pots that I planted them, so that I could refer back to old footage, old videos and photos and remember the varieties. The first step when I get ready to store my dahlias is to label them. And even when doing that, for some reason, sometimes labels slip away or they just get lost, and I always end up with mislabeled tubers, but we'll do our best. I'm making a little labeling area. I love those new labels I found on Amazon. They're really great because they're the perfect size to fit under the domes of my little seed trays, and I always have this problem that they don't always stay attached to the tuber. So I was thinking maybe if I use this little, I don't know the name of it in English, if I just make a little hole in it. Okay, I need to figure out how to do this. Where is the hole? Oh yeah, okay. Aha! You see, I can just make little holes in them and then use some of these mini cable ties to attach the labels to the tuber. So let's just do that. Once your dahlia is carefully labeled, step 2 is to cut back the foliage. Normally you can wait until the first light frost to cut off the foliage here. I'm doing this slightly early even though we're in mid-November now. So I just have a little Kangoo bag right here for my garden debris, and I'm just going to cut back the plant. Oh my gosh, come out. Wow. This has just grown massively. That's what's really great about dahlias, is that they grow year on year and then you can divide them and get more plants. If you planted yours in the ground, you could absolutely leave them in and protect them with a very thick layer of mulch, especially if your winters are pretty mild. For me, in a zone 8 to 9, a few years ago, I did leave some in the ground with a thick layer of mulch and they were absolutely fine. So that's totally personal preference. I do need to remove them from the containers though, because I need space for my spring bulbs. I'm going to label each dahlia, each tuber individually in the hope that we'll remember what's what. Then we'll clean the tubers and I'll show you in what I'll store them. Okay, let's go rinse this batch off. Last year I had simply brushed off the soil with a soft brush, but this year these are so full of dirt that I feel like giving them a good wash is going to be much more efficient. So it means I can really get in around the tubers. All right, it's the next day. Our dahlias have dried overnight. They look really great. I'm going to leave these to dry for a few days. I'm using an aerated crate just so that we can get a lot of airflow and make sure they're fully dry. This is because I don't want to introduce a lot of moisture during storage and make sure that they don't rot. I'm going to leave these in my garage, which is for now frost-free, and come back to them in a few days to finish the storage process. I'm just loading up the second batch of dahlias to clean up. You need help? Let's talk about tuberous begonias. Very much like dahlias, as soon as the first frost hits, you have to cut off their foliage and then store the corms or tubers for winter. Right now they don't look very beautiful, but these were a beautiful mix of pinks, oranges and whites, and we had a glorious show. We planted them together back in April and they tend to flower towards the end of the summer and then throughout autumn. Now they need a little bit of attention. Again, I'm doing this a little bit early. We haven't had frosts over here, but I may as well store up all my bulbs in one go. So let's take care of them. I'm just going to cut off the foliage at ground level. They don't look like much now. We're going to wash them off and then leave them to dry off, and I'll store them in little mesh bags ready to be replanted next year. And this is what we look like after a bath. Look at this. I mean, still really weird looking. Begonia tubers have a very specific shape. They are more concave at the bottom where the roots emerge from. And then in that little dip area is where you have your bloom stalks, and you can see where I've cut them off. Basically, the only thing you have to do is keep them in a cool, dark, dry place that is frost-free. And then you can reuse them from year to year. This is already the second year I've reused most of these. Sometimes the corms rot and they don't emerge back from the soil, but I think it's really great to be able to keep and perpetuate your crop year on year. I'll go grab an aerated crate where we can wait until they fully dry, and then we'll pop them into storage. Been a couple of days since I've had those drying out in the garage, so now it's time to remove damaged tubers and pack them up. So here's a really good example of what to remove. For example, here we have a tuber that was damaged and this needs to be cut off. Over here as well, This is probably a hole from when I use a fork to lift it out of the ground. You have to inspect each and individual tuber and remove whatever is damaged. This is another sign that you need to cut off this tuber. Can you see? It's almost detaching now, so it needs to go. Not so bad. Actually, I want to pick a few tubers for my sister and her husband. They recently purchased a new home in France, and so I want to plant up for her this Christmas beautiful containers. We'll do a layer of dahlias that will kick in the summer, and on top of that, tulips for spring, so she'll have both in one container. So I'm going to pick out a few things before putting them into storage for her. I know she likes really warm colors like red and pinks, so we'll try to pick something along those lines. So she has two big concrete containers that we're going to be planting in. I think they're about 1 meter long by 40 centimeters, judging by the pictures. So we need, I would think, at least 4 or 5 dahlias per container. So we'll take this red fiery one, which was one of the either red or yellow and red blooms that we add. Really beautiful. And ooh, this one is a pink one, so I feel like that will go really well. Maybe another red fiery, so we have repeat interest. What else do we have? Oh, Arabian Night. Arabian Night is really beautiful. Maybe Mexican Star as well. It has smaller blooms, but that can be really beautiful as well. Maybe this one. I'm not really sure because I waited a little bit too long to label them, but I think this one might be Amy Jane, a beautiful cactus type in yellow and pink, so I think that can soften this mix there. And also Akita Explosion that will bring in a bit of white, yellow and red together. I think this is going to be a beautiful mix. Ayushi likes it. It's been a few days, well actually a little over a week now, since we washed the dahlias, discarded any broken tubers and then left them to dry off in a frost-free place. So for me that was the garage, although I think it gets pretty cold there. So now that my tubers are fairly dry, that I've removed all the bits that won't keep, it's time to actually tuck them in for storage. I'm recycling some paper that we used for our move, and this year I've decided to actually wrap them into newspaper instead of using the shredded paper, just because it was such a mess when I unpacked everything. And also this time I have, you know, this slightly easier resource to deal with. So I'm just creating a little bundle, and then I'll show you. I have one big piece of cardboard where I have everything stacked up, and it will live in a shelf in the garage. Let's pack up the remainder of the tubers. Continue the pile. See you next year. For begonias, that's the same. They dried, and I'm just going to store them in this little mesh bag. It's really great because it lets air through, but of course it keeps everything packed together. So I didn't really separate the colors, but anyway, they're all in the similar tones, so red, oranges. These also need to be kept in a frost-free place, so I think actually I'm going to put them in the same box as the dahlias so that they can be nice and tucked in until it's time to replant them next year. And this is how you store your dahlia and begonia tubers over winter. It's a really easy process and it's really great to do because it can help you perpetuate your crop from year to year. I don't divide my tubers before storage because hey, look who's joining us. Hello. Hello. Didn't you film with Mama? Say hi to everyone. Hi. Last year I noticed that my larger tubers stored much better than the smaller ones, which completely desiccated. So I'm thinking if I want to divide anything and get more plants, I will do it next year. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, and I'll see you next time. Bye! Oi, Simba. Simba is so cute. Like he always wants to be cuddled. Yeah? You cold? You gonna go home? Okay, let's go home.